Airbnb guests are taking advantage of a loophole where police don't know what to do with the eviction moratorium, and they're staying past their checkout dates and claiming that they're tenants and are not being removed from their Airbnb properties. We're going through a really bad one right now. I just did a live stream on this, and we had audio issues, so I'm doing a real video on this, but I now get the chance to answer some of your questions about this. Really cool. So in this video, we're going to explain who this crazy guest is, why they're able to stay, of course, the law that we researched now to be better prepared for it, and we're actually dealing with one today, and we're much better prepared for it. So, you know, you lose some, you win some, and then I'm going to answer some of your very fast questions about this because we did the live stream. Sean Rakidzich, Airbnb Automated, and let's talk about kicking Airbnb guests out. Airbnb family, YouTube world, welcome back. So this has been in court a lot too. The question is an Airbnb guest or vacation rental guest a tenant? And state to state, this varies on like how long somebody stays before they constitute being a tenant. And so let me tell you that it really does depend, but I have some case law for you to help guide you on your journey to answer that question. Let me first tell you about my bad guest, then our legal discovery, and now what you can do. First off, let me let you know that all of my legal jargon, everything that I'm going to cite in this video is in the description below. You can open up all this stuff, and you need to keep this. You need to keep all the resources that I gave you kind of on file for in case, you know, if and when, hopefully never when, but if and when this happens. Now let me first just let you know that this is wild, but this is rare. I do also have long-term guests, like long-term tenants, multi-month, 6-month, year-long tenants, and I've had to evict those tenants too. Like, I've had to evict more of them that I actually like having to evict, and it really sucks. This is very rare, what's going on in our short-term rental business, but it is really because of this economic collapse that like laws have been put in place that allow for weird interpretations, and people are always trying to take advantage of stuff. I mean, companies are taking advantage of the Paycheck Protection Program and getting money that they don't deserve, right? Everybody's trying to take advantage of things, so here we are. Now, the way that this reservation happened, this was booked through a woman. I can't tell you her name, Airbnb content policy, I'm not allowed to share that. But there's somebody who came along with their reservation that we were not aware of. This woman said it was just her. So she books mid to late March. End of March, we get a call from the building saying that there's a domestic violence disturbance and that there's a man like beating a woman and a woman is screaming. We call the police, send the cops there. We reach out on Airbnb and say, hey, there's been a report of a domestic disturbance. First off, are you okay? Second, we need to find out what's going on because you don't have any guests declared, and this assailant, this male, cannot stay at the property, whoever he is. The police do report that there are multiple people in the property, a man and a woman, and that they can't do anything because it's civil, not criminal, unless she presses charges. There's nothing that we all can do. So through the Airbnb message thread, we get her assurances that this gentleman won't be staying anymore, all right? And then of course that's a lie. Now, we don't even know if we're still speaking to the woman or not, or if this whole time the man has been running the show through this woman's account. Very much could be the case. Now, time elapses and then there's another disturbance in April. Like mid-April, this disturbance happens. Then at that point, we try to get the police to remove him because she said she would remove him, but the police are like, we can't do anything unless the reservation ends. And their reservation was coming up to an end, and in order to cancel the reservation right there, we would have had to give them like a pretty chunky refund that they wouldn't have deserved. So we're trying to get that sorted with Airbnb. We decided, judgment call, that the couple of days was good enough to just let it ride out. This would not have changed the outcome though. This 2 or 3 days would not have changed the outcome because they already booked in March, and now we're in the mid of April here. So even if we canceled the reservation on the spot, we were screwed because here's what happened. Reservation ends, they don't leave. We tell them, you're past your checkout time. This girl needs to get out. And of course we know the guy's there, but we never allowed the guy to stay. We've of course tried to remove him. He's not part of our problem, or so we thought. This girl and guy don't leave. We then try to have them removed. The police are like, well, they have tenants' rights. You're gonna have to evict them. And right now, you can't evict people. So that's where it put us in a spot. These people stayed long enough that the cops thought that they were tenants. We, at this point in time, didn't have all of our legal ducks in a row, and we didn't have the proper stuff to present to them, and we, of course, did not know the next steps to take. So we ended up burning like a couple extra weeks of time, and now here we are. It's like May 7th. About 3 weeks after this last issue, and now we're still finally getting our way through it, but we finally have the firepower to figure it out and handle it. So that's where we are. 5 days ago, our only option was to remove the furniture as a way to like incentivize to move them out, because we had no other thing to do but to wait to evict them until 5 days ago. And here's what happened. 5 days ago, when we went to go remove the furniture, that guy pulled a gun on one of my team members, right? So we called the cops about that. And then we were told we have to involve the DA because it's still not criminal. So then with the license plate, our manager gets a copy of the license plate. We look this guy up, find out his full name, and we then pull his criminal record, find out he's a felon, and he was convicted for assault with a deadly weapon or aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. We call the police again, and the police still won't do anything. The Houston cops at this point have done nothing. So now, of course, we're taking this through to the DA. There is a loophole. It's not really a loophole, but you can still evict somebody if they pose immediate threat. So we do have recourse to evict them without going through the moratorium at this point, but they still stayed way too long. Now with your guests, you won't always have a felon who also has a gun, who then you're allowed to say that this person's a threat and that you can evict them immediately. You might be in a more convoluted situation. Like, God forbid anybody ever has to have a gun pulled on them, by the way. This has been the craziest guest we've ever had, and it wasn't even our guest. Rodney didn't book with us. He used somebody else's account. So now there's a lot that you can do here. If you were me, like the present version of me, time traveling 3 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, I wish that I knew what I do now at the end of March. So in this video, I'm going to tell you exactly everything you need to legally know to handle this, because we could have squashed this in March right away. And here's what you need to know. So first document I want to share with you is a William and Mary Law Review, volume 59, and I saved it in the description under iTenant, law review or something like that. And this big long report talks about short-term rentals and the legal ramifications of them and stuff. Real cool, real deep article. So we're going to skip to page 760, okay? So page 760 talks about the case for why Airbnb operators should be regulated like innkeepers and not like landlords, because of a few big reasons, but one main one that they argue is that a landlord-tenant relationship is a vertical power relationship where the landlord has more power inherently, so the tenants need protections and rights. Well, a host-guest is a collaborative horizontal relationship. There's no extra powers, so there should be no extra rights. And now courts have argued this either way, but there are courts who have argued and ruled that tenants or guests of an Airbnb property are guests of an inn or a hotel just the same. So innkeepers' rights apply to the Airbnb host. They are, amateur innkeepers per se. So this article, nice and deep, knock yourself out. Now, with that said, you're going to argue your innkeeper's rights and your rights to take action as an innkeeper could. Now, whether or not you can win this argument with the police, there's a protocol of taking this up the chain of command I'm going to walk you through, but there's also some other recourses as well. Because here's the one that we could have done immediately. There's something called theft by deception. Theft by deception, which I have the terms in the description for this video as well, state that any, misrepresentation or false impression that you give somebody in order to obtain possession of their property is theft. Now this is pretty broad, but it also applies to real estate. So when this group claimed that there's only one guest and then they ended up in a domestic disturbance, us finding out that they gained possession for a use that they misrepresented was theft. We could have pressed charges for theft by deception immediately right there, end of March. And that could have been our move to get them out before they became tenants. So theft by deception, keep the case law, have that handy. Okay, now let's say you don't want to charge somebody with theft as your way to get somebody out. Well, as an innkeeper, with that same situation, there's multiple rulings by Supreme Courts that say that an innkeeper can immediately remove a guest for disorderly conduct, like failure to pay, unauthorized guests or undeclared guests, like if they're a minor that's unaccompanied by a parent, if they bring the property that's dangerous to people, like a gun, all sorts of reasons why you can have somebody ejected. And so let me give you the case law for this. First off, there's going to be a review article I want you to have at cga.ct.gov in the description. Now that's a review of all the the fast and loose of what you can eject people for as an innkeeper. Now there's another one, UsLegal removal of guests link, and that one talks about the specific case law that I want you to know about. And there's 3 specific cases that I want to bring up. And one is Bertuca versus Martinez, and that's 2006. This is Texas, by the way, one of the states that I operate in. And this one says that there's no landlord-tenant relationship between an innkeeper and a guest, and that the innkeeper can remove someone with force without seeking legal action first, and they can use force as long as the force isn't excessive, right? So case law point 1, that's in the UsLegal run of documents here. The second one is State versus Ahumada. This is Arizona in 1980. And this says that upon expiration of a rental period, that the guest no longer has access or use or right of use to the property or to the rental space that they did previously rent. And we're going to revisit this later because you can lock someone out, is what this is saying, and they have no right to get back in for any purpose, and there's a follow-up to this. Now third, very much similar to the first one, this one is State versus Gordon, Maine, 1981. If a guest is to be ejected for occupancy violation, and like you can actually eject somebody if they violate your occupancy limit. If the home can only have 6 people, if they bring 8, an innkeeper can eject somebody for violating the parameters of the occupancy for that property. Now, if they bring a weapon, or if you find out that they're doing illegal activity like prostitution or anything like that, or they bring too many people, or all these things, anything that you can eject somebody for, they are immediately trespassing. And if they refuse to leave, this is criminal trespass, and now they are criminal, right? You can press charges on somebody for not leaving when you want to eject them. And then furthermore, you can take force to remove them, and you're not required to acquire a right of action in court to remove them. And that's State versus Gordon. So these are 3 parts. There's actually multiple case laws that are cited in this US legal document, but these are the ones that you want to know. And you want to keep these on file, on hand, because when you call the police to remove somebody, you want to let them know that you know your rights as an innkeeper. Now, you want to make your case that you're an innkeeper. This person has not stayed long enough to be a tenant. And then with that said, you are citing case law that rules in your favor, and this is what you're legally allowed to do. If the police don't want to hear that, ask for their sergeant, right? So they'll send somebody, and you like, what's your badge number? I need to speak to your sergeant, and I need to speak to him now. Then you get the sergeant, and you talk to the sergeant. If for some reason they don't want to hear what you have to say, then you have to call the DA. So call your local DA and make your case there. Now, possession is 9/10 of the law here. So if you are legally in the right, which you have case law to support, you take possession of your property, which means you can call a security company to bounce the guy out. Whoever is in your property, you can have them forcibly removed. The case law just says you're in your rights to remove somebody. Then from there, if that tenant, guest, has a problem with what you did, they would have to press charges against you, and you were showing the case law that shows you have the right. So if police won't take action, you can still take action. You're just gonna have to use a private party to remove the person. And then of course, you can of course continue to press charges through the DA if you want to, like, you know, theft by deception and stuff like that. And then finally, there's something called an Innkeepers Lien. When you lock someone out, if they owe you money for overstaying, or they like smoking violation, or any penalties that they've incurred on your property, you can lock their property in your inn or in your hotel, now in this case your Airbnb property, and you can hold that personal property on lien until they pay you what they owe you. And that's called an Innkeepers Lien, and I have the description there down below. So hindsight is 20/20. This is a month longer. This has taken a month longer than it should have because I did not know the law. And this is me learning the law and telling you what I've discovered. Yes, I could have prevented this if I knew more, right? But that's of course why this YouTube channel exists, right? Who knows this stuff? Airbnb is a young, like short-term rentals is a young space, and there's really nobody out there who's doing it this big. And of course, when you do something this big, you start to see it all, and we are seeing it all. So get ahead of it, and if you want to prevent this from happening, if you want some like levels of prevention, here's what you can do. You can get the guest to tell you that they live somewhere else. So in the message thread, be like, for our records, we want to confirm where your primary residential address is. Please provide us your primary residential address. And you get it like electronically. They are now confessing to you that they live somewhere else. So their use of your property is not to establish tenancy because they already have another home. Right? So this is not their residence, they've just confessed to actually having one. Also, don't give them a mailbox key. So they can't send themselves like a bill and prove that they've got bills in their name at this property. That's one way that people try to establish tenancy. And in California, a hotel did this to me. When we stayed for 28 days in California for a contract, I was like way back in the day, they wouldn't let us stay a full 28 days in the hotel. They would make us leave that room and go somewhere else for a day, and then we could come back. So you can move them from one address to another one if they want to stick with you multiple months. Like right now, while this moratorium is going on and you don't want to risk it, what you can do is move somebody from one unit to another for a couple days and then let them rebook for the original one if they liked it for another, say, 3 weeks or so. But don't let anybody stay longer than the short-term period of time in your state. So check with your state laws on what short-term is and find out how quickly people have been arguing tenancy. Now, if you don't give people those little loopholes to argue tenancy, like, you make sure that you have their residential address on file and you don't give them the opportunity to get mail, you should be fine with just using the length of time as your preventative measure. So this is everything that I have for you on this one right now. We had an issue with one yesterday and we crushed it because we know our stuff. We are learning and we're growing. And I'm giving this to you guys for free because you deserve it. And yes, it makes this industry look like a risky industry, but right now, everything is risky. The world is completely upside down right now, and this is what's happening. So this is truly really what's happening. And now that you know how to prevent it, it won't happen to you. So for those of you who appreciate this content, give it a like. Thank you very much. Thanks for watching Airbnb Automated, and I'll see you on the other side.